What's up, guys? Back in the shop today. We're still waiting on the decals for this, so we're not going to quite do this quite yet. But I'm going to bring my 700 twin in. I had taken it out the following Sunday after that lake video, and it wasn't acting right. It's got SLP twin pipes on it. It had an R12 helix in it, which is a 5036, I believe. Don't quote me. And the EGTs were a little cooler than I liked, but no matter what, it really didn't pull the RPM that I kind of wanted. SLP recommends 8,000 to 8,200, and I was maybe 7,900. Now, the tachometer is not what's the word I'm thinking of? Calibrated. So it's just the OEM tach. So those kind of fluctuate, but regardless, I wanted to try to find a different helix to pull a little bit more RPM. And I went to Craig's house that night, or actually that Saturday night. And turns out he had the helix that SLP recommends, which is a SLP 40, 46, 34 finish. He had that exact helix, so I was like, all right, cool, you know. I'm going to swap the helix out and take it back out on the lake. It was a little bit cooler outside, so the jetting would have been a little better. And long and behold, I get it out on the lake. I do like two little rips, and I went to go adjust the air fuel screws, and then after that, something got in the float on the right carburetor, or the main jet came unscrewed. It just was very unhappy. You held it wide open, and the left side EGT was 1050, 1080, and the right was 600, 650. So something's either in the float in that side, or the main jet fell out. Regardless, I'm going to bring it in today. We'll go through both carbs just to make sure. Those carbs are very sensitive to being dirty. They're sensitive to the float towers being ovaled out. I don't think they're too bad yet. I do have a spare set of carbs. There is a friend of mine who lives not too far from here where he drills them out and he puts the brass bushing in them, so it gets rid of that. But regardless, we're going to bring it in today. We're going to go through the carbs, double check them all. I might actually drop it one more jet size. Maybe. We haven't had cool temperatures. We've been steadily in 25 to 40 degrees. You know, I like to jet it when it's 15 degrees out. So, you know, when you're riding on a 22 degree day and it goes down to 10 at night, you're still relatively safe. It'll be a little bit fat on the heat of the day, but that's okay. But when I did jet it last, it was like 26 degrees out, and it was still like dark cardboard on them long poles. So it could go down probably 2 jets, but I'm only going to go 1 just to keep it relatively safe. So I got to get some stuff moved around in here, get it unloaded because it's outside in the trailer. We'll bring it in, and we'll get started. Alrighty, guys, got her in. She's cold. It's kind of crappy outside, like usual. It's not the greatest looking sled. She's got her bumps and bruises, but you know what? She still rips for what she is. She's got the Coso EGT gauges on it, and they're pretty accurate. Obviously not dead accurate, but they're pretty close for what they are. You just got to follow the instructions. I believe it was 6 inches from piston skirt is where the probe needs to be. And so far it's been pretty close. My hood cable broke a couple of years ago, and I got a crack in the hood, man. It's okay. I got a whole nother spare hood and nose cone in the basement. I don't feel like this hood's bad enough to swap out yet. Yeah, it's got a newer track on it. It's got the same track as my triples, except for 1.25 inches, not an inch. And it's got 1 3/8 studs. It's pretty sweet. Powder coated the rails a couple years ago. So, yeah, pop the hood and take a look. Oh, I never trust them hood cables. So yeah, here's what we got to work with. She's dirty. It's been a while since I've spent some serious time on this one. SLP airbox lid. Man, is that thing sweet. I can stick my hand right in there to get the rubber boots on the carbs. For me, ripping the carbs off this thing is a breeze. I'm not fighting the airbox to put it back on or anything. So, Wall Brothers steering post mount, IQR throttle block. I'm thinking about taking the tether off and just putting a regular like Pro X IQR kill switch on it. But I'm actually kind of thinking about taking the whole riser off. You know, this was my first sled out of my fleet, and I always like the Pro X's and the snowcross style sleds, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna kind of do that with this. You know, I got a Pro X shorty seat for this that I did a whole recover on in the tank, and I don't know, after riding those, I'm like, you know what, I got a new one that's rider forward and all that. I kind of like how the old sleds ride, man. They're old sleds. So I don't know, I'm kind of thinking about putting stock bar setup back on it. But yeah, here's where we're at. I'm gonna go ahead and take the airbox off and take these carbs out. It seriously only takes me like 5 minutes to take it all off. I've done this so many times. So I'll bring you back when I got the carbs off on the bench. One thing I'd like to note that I changed since the last time I jetted this thing. You know, I jetted it when it was 26 degrees out, and it seemed like it was pretty good. It wasn't pulling the RPM I wanted, but it seemed all right. Like I said, the plugs were dark cardboard. But since then, I went and I changed out the pre-filter on the hood. You know, it was crumbling. It was falling apart. So I did what everybody else says to do. Go to the hardware store. Go get some gutter foam. It fits pretty good. And it does. I had to carve a little shim piece. It didn't quite fill it all the way, but this is what I have left. And it's pretty close. The problem is the actual top of that, it's not as angled. It's more straight out, so you have to cut another wedge. But I think the problem there was, since I jetted it last, this material doesn't breathe as well as the original stuff. It's more dense. So I'm actually going to remove that and buy a generic piece of frog skin. I'm going to measure the hole, and they sell different sizes, and I think I'm just going to put a piece of frog skin over it. It'll breathe better. It's easier to clean off. So keep that in mind when you're doing that stuff. I'm sure if it's stock, probably not going to notice it, but just an FYI. Alright, I said fuck it, I'll record it. I'll record taking this all off. Start with the plugs, CDI, 2 rubber snaps on the back and the front. Don't forget the vents for the carbs. I always do. Airbox. Alright. I like to loosen up the chokes while the carbs are mounted because they're kind of tight and it'll hold the carb. So, loosen up the chokes while it's mounted. Okay. I'll loosen up the 5/16 headed hose clamps to hold the carbs on. Got those loose. And then I actually have real nice small clamps on my fuel line that take a 7mm head. Loosen those up. Take your slides, your cables, out of the carbs. Yep. Pull your fuel line off carefully. Take the choke out. One. Set that to the side. Take the other one off. Choke. Fuel line. Make sure my fuel's off here. Okay. 2 carburetors. Told you. Don't take long at all. Mine have SLP power packs in them. Have I noticed a difference? No. So those plates that slide in there, both of them have them. I've never noticed a difference. I don't do the SLP boost bottle either. That's a band-aid for bad tuning. So, I'm going to go set these on the bench and I'll get you guys moved over. Alright. We're on the bench. So, set that carb off to the side. The first thing I do, before I do anything else, is that I flip it upside down, watch the gas that comes out of it, and see how it lays out in the oil pan. You know, if you see little bubbles, you got water in the gas. And that'll do some weird stuff. Make a pop and fart, and it'll not run good. So far, I don't see anything. A lot of times I'll put it on the bench and do the same thing. Let it leak out on the bench. And then you'll see if there's gas in it, because it'll look like little gel BBs floating around. Now most of these are bubbles. That one, yeah, most of it's bubbles. I don't see any water in it. I did kind of put fresh gas in this recently. So, it should be pretty good. And on these sleds, the oil pump actually pumps oil into the fuel pump. And it pre-mixes oil in the gas before it even goes up to the carburetors. So most of the time these carbs are in fairly good shape. Pretty rarely do you see like ethanol gelled up in them. So pretty basic. 4 screws. Loosen them all up. Now one thing I didn't do after I took these off and I came over to the bench, I did not remember which side to switch, which is not good, because one carb's good and one is not, and now I don't know which one it is. So guess what, they're both getting ran through. So when this thing was tuned pretty good, the idle air temp, the temperature was level side to side. It wasn't like one was 400 degrees and the other one was 350 at idle. So there's a little shit in this. It's over here on this side. So another thing to keep in mind when you guys clean your carbs, especially cans, you have to take the air fuel screw out, because that is a very important circuit on these carburetors. If that is the slightest bit dirty, forget it. It's going to run like bag ass. So first thing, before you go and take it out, I like to turn them in to see how many turns out they are. When you tune these carbs, the more you turn it in, the richer the idle circuit gets. So I got half, one and a half, wow, fuck, 2. I had these turned way too far out. If you gotta go 2, you need a different pilot. One turn out is factory setting. If you gotta go more than 2, you need a different pilot. If you gotta close it, you need a different pilot. So get the air fuel screw out. Take take the floats out. I like to keep an eye on my needle and seat here, see if anything comes out of it. I don't see anything in there, but that doesn't mean anything. So now I'll take the pilot jet out. I have, since this has got twin pipes in it, I have put a richer pilot in it, thinking, you know, it'd be better when you let off from those long poles. And it didn't like it. It hated it, actually. So, that does not look good. Get my air gun out. Brake clean. I know it's not carb clean, but I don't like to use carb clean because carb clean likes to eat plastic and certain rubbers. It's very harsh. So I just use brake clean. Blow this out. See if there's anything in here. Yeah, it's fine. Now I have had a sled where I've taken it off. I've cleaned these out, and the thing it always ran kind of shitty. And I couldn't figure it out why. And again, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to throw my spare set of cards in it, see if that changes it. And the problem went away, and I'm like, all right, I'm missing something. I'm overseeing something here. And what it turned out to be was there was something in the air fuel screw circuit, but it was in the tower. It was in below. These carbs, you can take this whole tower off. You take these two tamper-proof Torx out, and the tower comes off, and the circuit goes through there, and I did find shit in there. Clean it out, put it all back together, ran good. So far, the only thing I'm seeing, or have found, smoking gun-wise, is that little piece of crud in this carb. Yeah, and it's kind of jelly. Whatever that is. So, we'll get that cleaned out. I'm going to go through this and brake clean it all and blow all the ports out, forward and backwards. Just in case something gets lodged. So I'll do that now. Don't touch your idle screws. I see people take them out all the time. You don't need to. It's plastic. The only thing it does is hold the slide up. Because then you're screwed. You're stuck resinking. I don't use a drill bit when I sink, but I'll show you guys how I do that when we cross that road. Alright. I didn't find anything really, other than what was in here in the float, or in the bowl. There was no water in the water catch or anything, so I'm just going to put this one back together real quick. I have 198 jets in it. SOP for twin pipes for these tell you to start with 210s. Now, a stock jet is a 185. They go up in essentially 2.5 increments. So 190, 192, 195, 198, 200. That's about 5 SOPs. I mean, it's smart because they don't want you to go out and blow it up, but they start you off really fat. I've talked to a few guys with pipes, and they say they're around 200s, 205s. I got 198s, and it's still kind of eh. So I'm going to put 195s in it when I put it back together here. I'm also going to take the pre-foam out of my hood. So I'll really have to keep an eye on the EGTs and the plugs the first good cold day I ride it. So I'm going to put this one back together and then tear into the other one. Hopefully that one's got a smoking gun, for one. Well, no reason. 2, that's the mag side carburetor then. Another thing to note, SOP does recommend you run staggered jetting, where your mag side is a richer plug, and that is because the exhaust is on that side. So they figure that that cylinder is going to run a little warmer. I've ran 2 sizes bigger, so 200 and 205, and that cylinder just was way different on EGT, like a lot cooler. So then I went down one, kind of more or less the same. So now I just run the same jet side to side. That's just me. You do you. I'm at 700 feet here elevation, so that's another big thing to take into consideration when you're jetting. You know, the higher up you are, the less jet you're going to use because the air is thinner. So if you're on these forums and these guys are telling you, oh, mine runs great with 190s in it, that might be the case, but they also might be at 2,500 feet or 3,000 feet, you know. So keep that in mind. Everything else, stock setting, 138 pilots. Like I said, I've gone up one and it hated it. Now on Craig has a 600, 98 600 with hot seat twin pipes, and that thing loved one pilot size larger. It would pop and fart with the regular pilots in it. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try a richer pilot. Night and day. Loved it. It was like brand like it came from the factory like that. So it's kind of, every machine's different. They all like different things. I did rebuild this motor maybe 150 miles ago. It got a welded crank with the oversized bearing on it. Wiseco top end pistons, 220 jugs. I do run a cheater head, so again, that's going to be different. Talked to a few guys and they say I should be running 93 octane, but everything we have around here that's non-ethanol is 91. The ethanol stuff is 93, but not a big fan of leaving that stuff in it because that's the stuff that just gels up and makes your life a living hell. So that's enough talking. I'll throw this one together and then we'll start taking apart the other one. Back. Not really a smoking gun on this other one either. The pilot jet did not look the greatest though. So if I had to point my finger at something, I'm gonna go with this pilot jet. I did drop it down to 195s. So I don't like that. I did not find anything in the needle and seat. On these key-ins, there is a float setting on these. Once you got your floats in, you gotta set the carb on its side in a certain spot, and it'll show you where the floats close all the way. It should be like that. So mine, that line should be parallel with the surface of this bowl. That's where the needle and seat closes off the fuel. That'll be the height of your fuel in your carb. The reason why I said if there's something in the needle and seat, it'll allow more fuel in. So the fuel level will actually be higher in the carb, allowing the vacuum to pull more fuel through. So this one looks like, I mean, it's close. Ask me, it should be adjusted just a hair, and all you do is you just bend the tab that holds the float just ever so slightly, guys. It's minimal stuff. I mean, look, I did it barely with my finger. It's dead perfect. There's a millimeter measurement that there is in the book. I just go off of the mold line there to the face of the carb. So, like I said, I did not see anything other than this pilot was kind of which is kind of odd because it only was unhappy at wide open throttle, which is at your main jet. It wouldn't build heat. Like I said, I thought the main jet fell out, so it was just sucking a bunch of fuel in, and that wasn't the case on either of the carbs. So it could have been that float setting. Like I said, if that fuel's too high in the carb, it draws more fuel into the engine. So hopefully it is that, or that pilot. I'm setting my air fuel screws one turn out, which is factory. Good start. There was another piece of whatever that gel shit is in this bowl. Small, but was there. Make sure there's nothing in that water catch. You know, this is partially my fault, this thing having an issue. Well, maybe not. I was going to say it's partially my fault because I don't think I cleaned the carbs yet this season, but I did. Because when I was rejetting it, so never mind on that. So I'll put this all back together. I'll put them back in the sled. And then I'll show you guys how I do my idle. I do my idle kind of old school. You know, per the manual on these, there is a specific tool. I have one, but I don't think it's for the 700. I believe it's for the 600. Because don't quote me on this. They had different size pins that held the throttle slides open. I'll show you that tool if I can find it relatively quick. What they look like. People use drill bits, which is fine. It's a good start, but every time I do that, it's never enough. This is the tool. Oh, it's just kind of dirty. This is the tool that they tell you to use. You slide it in around the throat. Slide it in here. And then you're supposed to close your idle screw until your slide's just barely rubbing on it. Yeah, like I said, that works, but when the sled's running, to me, it's never where it needs to be. So that kind of defeats the purpose. I'll use it as a starting reference. That's about as far as that goes. So I'll put these back on the sled, and I'll show you what I do. I'll show you the tool I use. I think it's better because it works off of the engine vacuum, and that's how they used to do the old Mikunis on the old Fuji motors. You were supposed to use a mercury gauge, which you can't buy that anymore. Motion Pro makes a couple gauges. Doesn't work as well. So I use this vacuum tool on the carbs. I did have to modify it because when I originally got it, you can get them on Amazon. You really had to close off the airflow in order to get these floats to work, which defeats the purpose of setting idle. So I actually drilled my holes out so you weren't choking the motor at all. But this is what I use. All you do is you put this while the sled's running. You put it over the mouth of the carb, and this float will start floating in there. Now you can close this off slowly and it'll start raising it up higher or lower. I try to keep it kind of as low as I can, because the higher you're raising it here, the more you're choking off the airflow going into the main carb and having to suck through this tiny little hole, causing you to essentially choke the motor. So this is how I set it. I start with the PTO side. I'll have it set in one spot, and then I'll go to the other carb and it'll be higher or lower, and I'll get it to the same spot. And depending on the idle RPM, if it's idling at 1500, great, leave it alone. You know, if it's low, raise them both up. Do both the carbs at the same time. Come back, start with the PTO side, see where this is at, set it with turning this in and out, set it at this bottom down here. Do the same for the other side. You know, keep doing it until you get your idle right. When I had it out on the lake in those tuning videos, I had a couple people saying, yeah, it's idling really high. It is, because I haven't adjusted the idle with that. And the other flip side to that is I kind of don't mind when it idles a little high, because it keeps it clean. Man, you get these things idling low and they load up real bad, and then they're a pig until you get them cleaned out. You know, a lot of people on these snowmobile pages, they like to get them to idle as low as they can. It's not a V8. You know, them guys, they lower the idle in their V8 so it sounds like it has a cam. Not to deal with two strokes, man. You want them to stay good and clean. The lower you idle them, or the more you lower the idle, the more it's going to load up, and then it's going to take a minute for it to clean out. So I like it. I like to be a little on the high side, or even if it high idles for you know, 10-15 seconds and then calms down, great, perfect. You know, just don't have it too high to where if you do a long pull and you let off and you don't give it any gas, now it's lean. You know, and when the carbs close and those pipes are hot and you have the idle lean, not a good deal. You know, a lot of these guys, they'll blow their sleds up because they have their idle circuit very clean and lean, and when they let off from them long pulls, you know, it's recommended you give it a couple quick full throttle snaps just to pour some fuel in there to cool off them pipes. And them guys won't do that, and then they'll just let off, and that's when the sled will melt down because that piston's hot, those pipes are hot. You know, you got them hot from holding the throttle real long, and then you let off, and now it's getting no fuel. Well, guess what? That's when bad things happen. So that's my input on the idle stuff. Like I said, you can buy these on Amazon. I do have vacuum sink gauges like some guys use for like crotch rockets and stuff, sport bikes with the 4 gauges. Yeah, they work. Kind of a pain in the ass. It's more triple oriented, triple Mikuni round slides. Flat sides, you don't have to do that. There's a different way to sink them. But this way works pretty good for me. So I'll get these put back on. Alright. I got the carbs back on. Straightforward. Fuel lines, chokes, clamps. Make sure you don't mix up your your throttle slide and cable. Before I really go any further, I make sure that both of them are opening at the same time. You know, that's kind of step one on synchronizing. You know, make sure they're both opening at the same exact time, which those are. So now, the proper way to do this is to get the engine warm first, and then sync your carbs and set your idle. I got to take this thing outside because I'll just choke myself out in here, and it's warm in here. It's like 60, 65 degrees in here, so kind of the wrong atmosphere to be sinking carbs in. So I'm going to take this thing outside. Now when I sink the carbs, like I said, I use this tool. I'll leave the air box kind of floating around willy-nilly up here. It'll be off to the side like this because your CDI's got to be plugged in. You know, your spark plug's got to be on in order for it to run. So I'll leave it off to the side, and then I'll set my carbs, like I said, using the vacuum tool. That's how I set my idle. And then I'll go from there, from throttle tip-in. I talked about that a little bit in that video. You know, these little air screws, they are kind of crucial on tip-in. You know, if it's kind of boggy, you might have too much or not enough fuel. And 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch turns are kind of dramatic on these, so you know, don't get crazy and I'm gonna turn them out a half turn. That's a lot. That's a lot. So keep that in mind. Another little trick for you before I get this thing outside. So the carbs have no gas in them right now. To get gas in them, sure, you can pull your ass off. 20-25 pulls, probably start up. Me personally, I'm over those days, man. I had an old gas cap, drill a hole in it, put an air fitting in it, and a hose on it. Man, just screw it on your gas tank, turn your gas on, blow in it a couple times, fills the carbs right up. You're not going to be able to blow hard enough to blow the diaphragms out of the fuel pump. So I used to do it with the air compressor very carefully, but you know, you don't always have your air compressor per se when you're getting sleds out of storage or something. So I just made that little gas cap. Works great, man. Alrighty guys, we're outside. Got my tool. I got my air box all plugged in. Spark plug caps are on. I did my my trick with my gas cap. On that, I did have to hold the vent line because my gas tank is really full. I haven't been riding it much, so I did have to hold my vent line. I flipped my finger over and started actually spewing gas out the vent line. So I haven't started yet. It's cold. All I did was prime the fuel and put the airbox on and move it outside. So, here we go. So they're really close right now. But I can just tell just by revving it up, it's really rich on the idle circuit. I noticed on the EGTs at idle, the right side was 80 degrees warmer, which is kind of not common for this thing. Normally they're within 20 to 30 degrees. But I'm going to put the air box on it so it's flowing as it should. Because when you hit the throttle, when it's just sitting here running, you can see, you know, every rotation there's a little fuel coming in and out, in and out. It's the pulse, it's the pulse of the motor. So I'm going to put the air box on it, and so it's breathing the way it's supposed to, and the vents are going to be on. So we'll do that, and I'll see if it's any better. Put the air box on it. I might have to do a little bit more adjusting, but I mean that's also kind of stuff you do out on the lake, not in your driveway, you know. little better. Runs a little better with the airbox on. It likes a little bit less jet. Well, there you go, guys. Kind of not going to be able to tell much more of how the jetting changed, or if it's really truly fixed until I get a chance to ride it. So, I mean, once we get snow, I'll try to make more riding videos. But as of right now, we don't have anything. So, yeah. There's not much more. It's a long video. Sorry, it's kind of long. It'll change of pace. It cut out a lot. So there's some stuff where I was rambling, but the stuff I did leave in there, I felt like it was a little bit more important. It's kind of hard adjusting the idle there with the gauge one-handed. It really didn't do a good job showing how to do it, I guess you could say. Maybe I'll try that again in another video. But it seems alright. It sounds kind of rich on the stand, but it always going to sound rich on the stand. Need to load. So, once we get the snow, I'll make a video, see how it tests out. Until next time, guys.